Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode of Wake the Future. So today we are going to be talking about another human superpower, and we've talked about vulnerability before, but today we are going to talk about adaptability.
And what's cool about this is that, some of the things that we talk about, whether it's on our episodes or just generally, relate back to experiences we have in day-to-day life. We have these little personal anecdotes. And so that's kind of the context today, because we're coming off a great holiday weekend. We spent quality time with family, and it was wonderful. And in doing that, we had some interesting conversations just about like how everyone was doing life. Our cousins have two kids. They're both Gen Zs. We talk about Gen Zs all the time. And so getting a perspective about two Gen Zs, both of whom have recently graduated college, what their experience is like, what they're seeing their friends go through, and then kind of thinking about what we're all going through. So as you mentioned, adaptability is on the brain today.
Yeah, but what a nerdy assessment. Like, what a lame conversation we have after being in a beach house.
We're dorks. You and I are going to do the same thing when we go to Ibiza next month. We're going to go to Ibiza and watch DJs at 6 in the morning. And we're going to figure out some way to relate that to an episode when we come home. So that's
good luck getting an episode that week.
We're going to be pre-recording for about 3 weeks because we're not going to be functioning for a while. We're talking to Gen Zs themselves about what their sort of expectations are of their careers, their future, where things are going for them right now, then getting the perspective of mom and dad, and then getting our perspective is sort of like, okay, so we see it this way from our generational point of view. What's it really like out there? So it's really interesting because a couple of things bubbled up immediately. Number one is the idea that it is still openly acknowledged that if you have a degree from a good university, that you are still lucky these days to have a job after graduation. It didn't used to be like that. It used to be that the ROI was pretty clear. It wasn't 100%, but like you were probably 80 to 90% plus if you graduated with a 4-year degree from a good university, that you were in pretty good shape as far as getting an entry-level job out of school. And that's not the case anymore. So this was reinforced by these conversations, was the fact that for every kid, including, fortunately, our two cousins who graduated with a 4-year degree and were able to find something good, they know someone who's still unemployed. So it put some meat on the bones of what we talk about conceptually about our younger people coming into an uncertain world with a very shaky job market, and what does that look like psychologically for them and everything that relates to that.
Yeah, and a lot of them had very well-connected parents. And it used to be, whether like that's nepotism or just the fact that like, plugged in generations can plug in the next generation. Like none of that is guaranteed anymore. And we were talking to your cousins, two of who like have very senior positions in the knowledge economy.
Yeah.
Right. And they couldn't guarantee anything. And then they were talking about the fact that for thousands of hires for just a few dozen positions, a lot of this is funneled through AI systems too. So like, yes, there's no preferential treatment, which could be a good thing. But secondarily, it's like, who is actually getting hired for a lot of these jobs?
So the plus is that, yes, I mean, listen, nepotism in balance is not a good thing. But there's a flip side to this. It's what you just said. The fact that AI systems are being implemented at every layer of organization, certainly when it comes to human resources, so that these systems are making determinations about hundreds or thousands of resumes. And it's somewhat opaque as to what the criteria are that they're looking for.
It's highly opaque.
Highly opaque. So even the people running HR functions are not always clear about what the AI tools are using as the baseline criteria to funnel people through. Now, it's not to say that it's always going to fail. In many cases, you're still going to get great candidates, but there are certain variables we have to start thinking about a little bit more.
And you could argue that there was never a lot of transparency in the HR screening process.
Right.
But now, like, you add that extra layer of AI, and then you have a lot of people wondering with little to no feedback. It used to then be, all right, you're not right for this role. You don't have these credentials. You don't have enough experience in XYZ. Now it's just, you have no idea why you're not getting hired. You just haven't made it through the filter. I was reading an article the other day about the rise of the side hustle. And it used to just be, if someone needed an extra income stream, or it was kind of like for those that couldn't hack it. Now it's that safety net. It's like, let me try to have some passive income in some way so that I have some sort of guarantee that I am creating for myself. Because there's so much uncertainty and insecurity out there.
Going back for a second to the fact that AI systems are basically the net through which a lot of resumes are filtered now, and it's happening in every sector, through every level of the organization. What it means is that, to your point, people don't know, am I using the wrong words in my, quote, cover letter? Am I using the wrong words in my resume? Is there something that demographically is causing me to not meet a certain quota or certain screens? Are there things that I'm being penalized for or other people might be rewarded for that it's opaque? And when you don't get feedback, then the same thing happens over and over again. And I've read research recently that suggests that the same people are effectively being discriminated against. It's not a conscious discrimination, but they're being discriminated against and being withheld opportunities because of the fact that they're falling victim to these kind of blanket criteria that are applied in a lot of these AI tools. So you're leading to the same biases start to creep in. Now, you could argue that it's replacing human biases because people with butts in chairs used to look at people and probably evaluate them on very subjective criteria. It wasn't just about where did you get your degree from, but it's about, do I like this person? Do I like the way they look? Do I like the way that they answered my question? Now it's something that's very different, but it's even more opaque. So that's number one. And then number two, you're talking about side hustles. This relates very cleanly to a couple of things. In last week's episode, the idea that as AI becomes, in theory, a more democratized tool, and I argued that it's not going to be fully democratized, that everyone was going to basically be able to start their own side hustle and be an entrepreneur of one. That's the argument. And I said that there are three fundamental assumptions being made that are incorrect that lead to that. Does everyone have a marketable idea or service? Can everyone sell themselves? And will everyone have unfettered access to AI? So the idea of having to do a side hustle suggests that everyone's going to have the ability to do that. And a lot of people do not have an effective side hustle. But then there's the third part of this, which is interesting because we were around, as you mentioned before, very young men, early 20s, postgraduate. And what you realize is that the ones that are gainfully employed or not, their side hustle is almost baked in. They're part of this kind of gambling economy.
Yeah, we were watching the World Cup and I was like, oh, who are you rooting for? They're like, whoever I have money on.
Some of them actually turn it into supplemental income. If you're good enough at it, you can, over the course of time, it's unlike a casino where typically over the course of time, the house will make the money. Here, if you know what you're doing, you can parlay that into like a side hustle. Or in some cases, it's like day trading. It can be your primary hustle. So I see in real time the fact that this gambling economy and everything that's being aimed primarily at young men, you see it materializing, And I think all the sports that I love, I'm not a big soccer fan. I'm into it now because of the World Cup. But all the sports that I love, we're concerned about how do we keep young people engaged with shorter attention spans. One way to do it, aside from producing really novel, innovative influencer content, is to really promote gambling. So that's what's happening.
We've talked so much, and you've heard me say this so many times, that we are educating a generation around being smart, right? It's like rote memorization and doing well on tests. You get into college, and then the needle has shifted over the last handful of years to becoming intelligent. So we always thought that if we move from like smart to intelligent, that we would solve for a lot of these problems because it was critical thinking and all of this. But now with AI, it's like intelligence, however you define it, and this is not getting into the consciousness part of this conversation, but it's like we put our money, right, on a generation that was intelligent. And now, like, there are a lot of intelligent kids out there who are trying to find jobs. And now that is not the differentiator anymore. And you and I were talking about the fact that, like, intelligence is not guaranteeing anything. It's like, so what is the, like, defining feature here? Like, what are we actually, what's the point of all of this?
And I mean, again, we can argue about intelligence metrics till we're blue in the face. And that's historically what's done. And, you see all of these indices that suggest that American, educational outcomes are falling behind a lot of other countries. That's probably true. So we may not be producing the most intelligence. Who knows? But whether or not they are capable and intelligent, the world they're moving into is very different. And adaptability is the superpower. And let's talk about just tick off why. Adaptability in terms of you're not guaranteed a stable job anymore when you graduate school. If you don't get a job when you graduate school, or, oh, by the way, if you are not getting a job in the midpoint of your career, and we know a lot of people this is affecting, it may not be apparent why you're not getting that job. Are there AI systems that are screening out your resume for reasons that you don't know? And is it going to be basically like a control experiment to try different things until something hits? And then you're like, okay, maybe it was this variable. So you have to be adaptable in your expectations, even if you're in the middle of your career. You have to be adaptable in terms of being able to start a side hustle and understanding that those variables are going to be different from person to person. Will everyone have equal access to AI tools? Does everyone have a similarly marketable and good idea? So adaptability with unknowns all around us is going to be massively important, and I would argue, as if not more important than intelligence.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Like the ability to pivot. And so like you hear a lot of like different words used to describe the same thing. So like career ladders, all of the different pathways you can take. A futurist friend of mine, April Rinney, talks about career portfolios, kind of like stock portfolios, but you have like different facets of your career and you're cobbling them together. Then it's like the octopus career. It's like the 8 legs of the octopus. They talk about the octopus organization, but then it's like all the different tentacles that you have in different areas and facets of your life. And if one doesn't work, just kind of like with an octopus, like you chop it off, it regenerates, and like then you can start something fresh and new. And this all really speaks to the I of our A+I framework, which is identity. And you could argue that it's like our identity is going to be constantly almost shape-shifting and malleable. Or you could argue that your identity is your like rock solid foundational layer. And then like the pieces, like the Lego pieces are just going to have to move on top of the board, but the board stays solid. And I think people are going to grapple with both. But the adaptability piece is so fundamental because we always think of everything as being fixed and linear. And even like the idea of someone young, like picking a major, it like all of these variables are so antiquated where it sounds so cliche, but it's like comfortable uncertainty.
It is accepting that uncertainty is always going to be there. So the idea that anything is a guarantee anymore and anything is linear, completely out the window. That's just outmoded thinking. So to your point about identity, I think of the foundation of the house when it comes to the identity as being fixed. I don't think that anyone should be compromising at the core who they are, what their belief system is, and what makes them uniquely them from a human perspective. But everything layered on top of that, those things that we tend to associate with our identity, whether right or wrong, and I think part of what's great about this era we're in is it's shining a light on this. It's putting a mirror against us. We talked about this with the AI mirror episode, is that everything about how our career or our particular job or these more transactional components of what we're doing at any given point in time, if we stop the clock in our lifetime, like when we're 20, when we're 40, when we're 60, those things might be rotating and revolving like a game of musical chairs constantly. So if we accept that that stuff is always moving and we can no longer assume that that's going to be a fixed part of our identity, but we never betray the core identity of what makes us truly who we are, then I think we'll be in a better position to succeed. There are brilliant people I know who are really scuffling right now in this world of uncertainty. They're not sure why they can't level up. They're confused. And there are complete dumbasses who I know personally and who I see out there who have fallen forward and are doing really, really well. Some of them, for example, have become really wealthy just speculating on crypto, okay? With no real strategy other than the fact that they're gonna play with monopoly money and it's worked for them. So here's the thing. If we're in a world where you can be a complete dunce and fall forward and you can be brilliant, measurably so, and really ambitious but still struggle, that to me tells me that the correlates are not the same anymore. So the pieces on the board have moved, and that's why adaptability, I think, is going to be the ultimate superpower. And we have to retrain ourselves. You know, we're in our 40s. We have to retrain ourselves to be as adaptable as we can going forward because none of our assumptions about our careers at this point and our eventual retirement are going to be what they would have been 20, 30 years ago. We have to make sure our kids are ready for this kind of world. And this includes our parents' generation. Even the senior market has to get acclimated to this, because some of them do not have the financial fallback options they thought they were going to have earlier in life, or they're getting bored, or they're living longer and they have vitality. And they're trying to figure out, this is not what I signed up for.
Well,
all of these X variables, what do I do?
Be harder to move because talk about like a deeply entrenched fixed mindset, right? Because these are just mindset shifts. That's all it comes down to. And moving from fixed to fluid. And if you are used to, and like you prided yourselves, right, based on what you know and what you've created and who you were in the marketplace and all of these things, then there is no incentive to change. And then, like, if you're not keeping up and you're not adapting with the times, then I think we are going to see a lot of people across the age spectrum then be like, oh my God, is the future passing me by? There's the have and have-nots conversation, right? It's like, we can talk about inequality and wealth disparities. That's not this right now. And then there's the can and cannots. Then now we're kind of in the do and do-nots. And that's what you were mentioning the other day, where it's like, the do-nots are the ones that are like, no, I have done these things a certain way. Why would I want to change? Like, this is what I know. And it's like what I always talk about, the fact that the future will reward the generalists and not the specialists. The deep specialized knowledge is going on to AI, but that the generalists, right, a lot of that is about being adaptable in your thinking. It's about constantly challenging your own worldview. We've talked about this in other episodes when we've talked about our A+I framework, and that a core part of agency is also using others as sparring partners.
Yeah.
And if you have AI as a sycophant who is always agreeing with you, then you need something out there to challenge your thinking, challenge how you see something. That is flexing the curiosity muscle.
You use that great analogy of an octopus. That's what you're talking about here.
Yeah.
You know, being a generalist is sort of like that. It's that you have these different tentacles, and if one is no longer useful, then you can rely on the others, and the
Chop
one
it
that's
off.
no longer useful, you can sort of regenerate into something else.
Yeah.
And I think being a generalist automatically feeds into being adaptable in this kind of X variable future. And you know, I think there's a very good way to put a positive on this, because a lot of this is about uncertainty and it could seem precarious. But I think the bottom line here is that we're all in this together, because I tend to think of us as 40-something futurists. There are times where, you know, moments of vulnerability, I'm like, is the future passing me by? Is the future passing us by? And
no, Chaos Sherpa.
And then, what would my Sherpa name be if I'm officially a Chaos Sherpa, or you are? What's
I don't know. I
officially
don't want to be blamed for like Sherpa appropriation.
for cultural appropriation? There are times where we might, as humans, think, is the future passing us by? Even as people who are fairly contemporary, we study the future. And then, and part of, I think, the heuristic is, well, younger people, they have their own challenges and we can judge them all we want, but they're going to be more future ready just by virtue of the fact that they're digital natives. And then you see them and you realize they're dealing with the same stuff we are. They're dealing with the same challenges.
Yeah.
They're dealing with the same uncertainty. And you know what? So are our parents. So what it shows me is that everyone cross-generationally, cross-industry, and cross-geography are dealing with some of these same things. It's kind of what is uniting us now at this inflection point as a species. So I actually view that as kind of a let's come together moment.
I would actually argue, taking this almost to a very esoteric level,
Yeah.
that like so much of this is already written in our DNA. So
Yeah.
it's like when you think about us on the biological level, like we are constructed like atom by atom to
Yeah.
be such highly adaptable and adaptive creatures. What is written into our biological code is so extraordinary. So to think that this cannot be written and rewritten into kind of our cognitive code, I think is a cop-out.
Yeah.
I think that every single person is capable of that level of adaptability. It's just learning how to unlearn. And it's like we just need to take the French braid, such a stupid hair analogy, but it's like take and like pull all the strands apart, things that were so like interlinked, and just pull everything apart and really think like, what are the things that we can forget? What were we taught that doesn't work anymore?
Right.
I know that French braid analogy just completely confounded you. As
No,
someone
it didn't
with
confound
no
me
hair.
at all. Now we'll call this the French braid phenomenon. Bringing this full circle, we're not talking about consciousness really here, but the two most fundamental components within consciousness that we've talked about in previous episodes are A for agency and I for identity.
Mhm.
And we've talked here about identity. And part of agency is the ability for humans, the unique ability for humans, unlike other species and known intelligences, including artificial intelligence, is to take the programming we have and adapt it into something completely novel. That we have the agency to do that. Innovation is all about the human capacity for agency. How do we create something new that there are no blueprints for, that there's no programming for? And we can do that in every facet of our lives. So as human beings, we can innovate around how we approach a world of uncertainty. It's within us to be able to do it.
A plus I, yes, it's agency and identity, but it can be applied in so many ways.
Yes.
It is, when you talk about consciousness, it is awareness plus imagination. When we
Yes.
talk about this, it is adaptability plus ingenuity. So it's like the A plus I serves as like a full kind of spectrum look at what it's going to mean to be human. What do we need to double down on?
Yeah.
And I go back to the same point, which is how do we unlearn the things that have been so drilled into us, not just from the time that we were born, but going back generations.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, that's a great way to put a bow on this today. So at this point, we've identified two superpowers that human beings need to have to survive and thrive in the future. One is vulnerability. The other is now adaptability. And there are going to be many more coming in the future. I can promise you that. So thank you for joining today. As always, Erica and I love having this conversation with you. Please check out our YouTube channel, subscribe, like, share that content. More importantly, this comes on the heels of last week when we officially launched our new website, wakethefuture.com. We encourage all of you to also go there. Please join our mailing list, subscribe to that for great content coming up, and we'll see you guys next week.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, like, follow, and subscribe to stay ahead of what's next. I'm Erica Orange.
And I'm Jared Weiner. Thanks for waking the future with us. We'll see you next time.